Popper was saying that totalitarian regimes and totalitarian ideologies represent a threat to open society. What we discovered is that weak states, failing states, can equally be a danger to open society. So open society is threatened from all sides. That was a very enlightening discovery. And the second is that the nature of a liberal democracy, it does not consist merely of free elections. Free elections are important, but it's only a part of the institutions that you need. You need constraints on governmental powers, a division of powers, the rule of law, independent judiciary, independent media, freedom of speech, and other institutions. And if it comes to sort of sequencing of introducing democracy or open society, it's actually more important to have the institutions in place. Because if you just have free elections without the institutions and traditions, then you may have results that are now called illiberal democracy. Or you could have, in fact, breakdown and failed states. So I think those two lessons that I learned, I think, are relevant. Now, when it comes to the work of the foundation, basically, we have come to the conclusion that the foundation has an important role to play, fill a certain vacuum, and that is in two areas. First and foremost, in helping civil society, supporting civil society in holding governments accountable. And secondly, in helping governments that seek to build open societies, in providing them with systems and capacity to deliver on their promises. This is in case of what you might call a democratic regime change, when a new group that had been previously excluded is elected to power with good intentions, but without the capacity to deliver on those intentions. So this is what was the case in the former Soviet Empire, helping governments like, for instance, Ukraine, to build their capacity, helped to establish democracy there. And I'm actually very proud of the fact that Ukraine is a democracy. Now, as you know, you've had the Orange Revolution, and I'm certainly not a supporter of revolutions, because revolutions are a manifestation of a democratic deficit. And the revolution itself cannot possibly fill that deficit. So it's much more important to build the institutions rather than to foment revolutions. So I'm an evolutionary and not a revolutionary, even though I'm very proud of having built the foundations on which countries like Georgia and Ukraine did insist on democratic principles. But as I say, it was the failure of the system that required that outcome. So we do have some bases in Latin America. I would mention an organization in Mexico called IMAC, which is pioneering freedom of information. We support them, and they in turn support our efforts in other parts of the world in passing enlightened laws on freedom of information. And there's another organization in Mexico, Fundar, which monitors the budgetary expenditures, and the same applies. We support them, and they in turn support our foundations in other parts of the world in training people in the methods of monitoring budgetary expenditures. And that, I think, is a very important part of an open society. I came to that insight in South Africa, which basically has a dominant party that could endanger democracy and open society. But in fact, you have an open society because you have an independent judiciary and you have an active civil society that holds the government accountable. Now, that effort generally, it does need financial support, and it's not so easy to get it from philanthropists, because philanthropists don't like to be involved in things that may be politically controversial. So that is where I feel that my foundation has a particular niche, so to speak, a role to play. And recently I decided that the foundation should continue beyond me. Originally I wanted to spend the money while I'm in control of spending it, because spending it in a philanthropic way is actually more difficult than spending it efficiently is actually more important and more difficult than making it. And if you look, because when you make money, it's relatively easy. You have a single criterion, the bottom line. But when you are giving money away, you have to look at what effect you have on society, and different people are affected differently, and you cannot really add it up. It would be inappropriate to add it up. Now, one subject that I'd like to talk about, which I think has particular relevance to Latin America, that's the resource curse. And that is that developing countries that are rich in natural resources, you find that the people are just as poor or even poorer than countries without natural resources, because you have worse governments and you have civil strife and lots of wars. If you look at Africa, Angola, the Congo, Nigeria, which has a tradition of corruption, the Sudan. These are the trouble spots in Africa. Now, it's easier to try to capture resources, the revenues from resources which are there, than it is to create resources where there aren't any. So data transparency and accountability is a very promising field for reform. This is a relatively recent development. It started in 2002 with a campaign, Publish What You Pay. And that was to hold the international oil and mining companies accountable for reporting what they pay to various countries, so that could be in theory added up and the governments held accountable. It's very fast developed into a second step, which is publish what you receive. And for instance, Nigeria, which is a country where practically everything has been tried and nothing has worked. This effort under the second term of President Obasanjo, they published the revenues that they received from the oil companies and where they distributed to various states and local authorities. And then the people could ask questions, where is the money? And out of that came actual legal proceedings against some governors. So, and in the last few years, Nigeria's performance has greatly improved. There is the civil society initiative was actually taken up by the British government, which brought together governments, companies, international oil and mining companies, and civil society, and established something called Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI. Not a very catchy name, but it actually has made a lot of progress. Standards are being established, and a lot of progress is being made in countries like Nigeria or Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan, countries which are otherwise not necessarily known for very democratic governments. But a lot of progress is made on the utilization of the resources, accountability, setting up oil funds, and so on. So this has been so promising that we now set up the Independent Revenue Watch Institute, supported not only by me but also by in equal amount by the Hewlett Foundation and also the Norwegian government, and I think other people are coming in. And this we have had. We haven't penetrated very far in Latin America, but I very much hope that there will be a receptivity. And I think in some ways it may be something that even the OAS could encourage the member governments to participate and to join. So that's really, I would say, that is the most practically relevant thing that I could propose to you. I wonder what you think, so I would like to stop at this point and open the floor for questions.
Vamos a entonces abrir unos minutos para las preguntas que ustedes quieran hacer. No puedo dejar de mencionar que hace unos minutos, cuando conversábamos en mi oficina, le entregamos al señor Soroblack una copia de nuestra Carta Democrática Interamericana y ha sido muy grato escucharlo al enumerar los principios de una sociedad abierta, de una open society, de qué manera esos principios coinciden casi idénticamente con los enunciados en la Carta Democrática Interamericana en sus primeros artículos. Eso creo que es importante ponerlo de relieve en este momento. Pero ofrezco la palabra para las preguntas que ustedes quieran hacer. La señora embajadora de Belice, doña Lisa Schumann.
Thank you, Secretary General. Mr. Soros, once again, we've seen the value of the type of discussion that we're having here today, and I thank you for the opportunity to address my concerns, which I know is a concern that most of us, at least in the Caribbean, and certainly in Central America, have. Belize is one of these unique countries that is poised between the two. But my question is this. My own Prime Minister has observed on more than one occasion that although the countries of the Caribbean have been relative havens of prosperity for the last 30 years, we really have not developed in the way that we should have. And therefore, I would like your view on not only having an open